Yes.
I can tell you right now, no matter who you are, you can put yourself out in the street and you're probably going to make more money than self-publishing.
Oh God, yeah. Literally. No matter how fucking ugly you are, fat you are, making OnlyFans, I guarantee you'll 100 times.
It's a great market for fat people.
OnlyFans, yeah. You'll make 100 times the money selling your ugly ass on OnlyFans than you will self-publishing books.
That is 100% true, and Nikocado Avocado is harrowing proof of this.
Oh God. Yeah, that's the fucking
That is anatomy which I can only describe as eldritch. Welcome back to the Unreal Podcast. I'm your host, LAbuschagne, and today we are talking on the internet's first, only, and in my very qualified opinion, best podcast on internet fiction, transgressive fiction, and everything on 4chan that's actually good. About a book from 4chan that's actually good. As always, I'm your host, LAbuschagne, and I'm joined tonight by a wine-tasting glass of Vanderham liqueur. If you haven't heard of it, and I wouldn't be surprised because frankly I hadn't heard of it until I nicked one from the liquor store. It's a tangerine liqueur with a bunch of, random spices and other shit that was just growing in the guy's garden at the time he felt like making moonshine. It's a traditional South African thing, the website says. And I mean, granted, I'm not a very traditional South African, but I never heard of the stuff. It's pretty good. Have you ever had like a nachi or a tangerine or a really kind of like stale orange? It's like that, but turned into alcohol syrup. It pairs really well with drinking out the bottle while driving in the back of a pickup truck through the suburbs, which I did to test it. But I'm not doing that tonight because I'm recording a fucking podcast. Instead, I'm pairing it with my co-host. As always, welcome, Rhymes. Great to have you here, man.
What's up, man? Yeah, you guys can follow me at Manta Rhyme on Twitter. You will be disappointed that I don't tweet basically ever. The Twitter's just there to catalog all the shit I release, which includes essays. Sometimes I pop into a short story anthology if I can find the motivation to write anything. Today, we're talking about a well-known book. You may have heard of something called Harassment Architecture from famous non-Chinese author Mike Mahoney. Critics have described it as American Psycho for racists and American Psycho for incels. I think it's more like American Psycho for 23-year-old Blue Chew addicts. So, LA, what did you think of Harassment Architecture?
Well, I'd say this would put me on a watch list, but that's discounting everything I've done that would already put me on a watch list if I didn't live in Africa. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I read the shit out of this book. I finished it in 2 days flat, wrote down half the quotes to steal for my own stuff, and then read it again. It's a pretty good book. Well, okay. I mean, technically, it's not. It's a fun book. But it hits that sweet spot between novel and diatribe that really, it's unique.
Yeah, I'd say it is technically a book in so much as any packet of bound pages is a book. It certainly isn't a novel. It was enjoyable at some points. I don't know, if you liked how he handled the character in scary quotes, his violent urges. I don't know if that was something you enjoyed.
With that, what I found most interesting about that, and now I'm going to paraphrase something I read on Poll here, because despite my best interests and intentions, I do occasionally still go through Poll, is this book is like 10% really good ideas on how to collapse society. Like, Mike Mahoney is a man very familiar with the anarchist cookbook. And you can tell because he's got some hilarious ways just how to give people a really shit day, And so, like the violent urges part, I thought that was the most interesting. Not necessarily, the detail of the fantasy, because if you want, detailed macabre shit, just read like Sod or, Patrick Bateman's book. That one. Now, that's a pretty good autobiography. The actual technicalities behind it and the variation, because we've got, in the same paragraph, guy walking in and, just popping a few caps in whoever's sitting at the diner. I think it was cops. And then, on the other hand, you've got, cracking open ceiling tiles and hiding dead fish there. It's a range. I like a range.
Yeah, no, what you mentioned is, that's actually what I liked about the book. Not really the depiction of violence or any of his supposed ideas about society. Rather, it was when he was trying to do humor, he hit the mark pretty consistently. What I did do through this book, I wasn't wowed by ideas and I wasn't shocked by violence, but I did laugh.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's often forgotten about this book. It is funny. I wouldn't necessarily go to this saying that it's satire because, I mean, Mike Mahoney is obviously exaggerating the character, self-insert when he
Right.
writes this. And I mean, we all do that. But I think there's definitely a very high level of self-awareness that, like, the spectacle of actually putting these words on a page and trying to sell it. That one was pretty good.
Yeah, the self-awareness that was found throughout the book kind of detracted from the quality a bit because, like you say, and like I really believe, this is less of a novel, even as a less structured. It's not a novel at all. It's more like a manifesto with a central character sort of plugged in. And taken from that perspective, all the self-aware, self-deprecating things are sort of, he comes like so close to almost saying something of substance, and then he completely undercuts himself with ironic humor. And that kind of took away from the book for me a little bit.
You can definitely see that. I think it's like a real mishandling of bathos. Bathos, not to be confused with his more popular cousin, Pathos, who, as we all know, is like the Musketeer guy. Bathos is like when you do something really fucked up and then you tell a joke. And it's like Family Guy operates on bathos. You know that O'Brien's death episode where he gets ran over by a car and it's really gory, and then a squirrel walks over and spits on him and kicks him. That's bathos. And I think you see a lot of that here. And while the criticism I would have for it is essentially it doesn't serve to make a point. It leaves an impression, but the problem is the impression is then, oh, look how dark it got and then how funny it got. Not, oh, gee, he really is, telling the truth about how horrible it is to, live in New York City or medium well steaks, something like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. He sort of makes a farce of everything, which would be good if this was a novel. It would be something you could appreciate from a technical level if this was even pretending to be a novel. And that, like what you said, bathos, I hadn't heard of it, but that's a really good one word to encapsulate like a lot of what I dislike about media. The need to immediately follow something that should be taken seriously, something severe, with a joke, which doesn't brighten the mood of the reader or of the audience so much as it completely undercuts and delegitimizes whatever serious thing you were trying to do.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the issue, because if you've like looked up who Mike Mahoney is as a person, and this is sort of like beyond the scope of his book, I'd say, but you can tell he actually has views that would go down very well on the parts of 4chan that the liberal media pretends is all of 4chan. I think in that sense, immediately telling a joke, it's sort of like to take a word out of that side's mouths. Schrodinger's racist. It's like, it's sincere as long as everyone else in the room agrees with you. But you add the joke in the end to say, like, no, dude, it's okay. I don't really deny the Holocaust. Look, I'm making fun of the whole situation. Look how absurd it is for somebody to say that. I mean, even in the book, you can tell he's absurd. Look, this guy's a loser. He wears Brooks Brothers shirts.
Dude, that perspective kind of makes it worse. Like, it almost looks like he's trying to cover his ass, which makes him seem like a liar, or rather a total grifter, right?
Yeah,
if it's not just like a fear of being seen as ridiculous, but more so a fear of being seen as honest, that kind of makes me respect him less as an artist. I don't know about you.
Well, I mean, as an artist, in my opinion, like, the less I know about the guy, the better. Since they always, do shit like this, or they're like murderers or pedophiles or violently supportive of the Algerian Revolution, shit like that. So, I mean, but of course, I read 2 websites on Mike Mahoney, one of which was by Antifa, really get a full spectrum here. And yeah, and the consensus is the guy is a grifter. It's like, even if he does sincerely believe this, he's also, an editor for Breitbart, or at least he was. I have no great belief that Mike Mahoney will ever actually throw a Molotov cocktail at a police station.
Oh, right. No way. And I wouldn't expect him to. Just because you write things and might have sincere beliefs about revolution and change doesn't mean you have to go kill people to be legitimate.
Yeah.
Although I would like to see it. So you say, and a lot of people reviewing this book or maligning this book say, well, it's very influenced by Pohl. It's a lot of like stitched together Pohl rants. When I read it, my first thought wasn't even Pohl. It was R9K, like 2015, 2016 R9K. Like, a lot of this dude's rambling isn't violent schizo rambles. It's like dreamy autist ramblings. It's like my diary desk. It's like journal entries from a man suffering from social maladjustment, more so than an angry, violent terrorist.
Yeah, I'd strongly agree. Like the closest thing I can compare it to is, well, actually, the best description I can give this is, yeah, you ever read the Elliot Rodgers book, his Manifesto? That one. Yeah, which I believe Monkey Jones did a hilarious style of the Wimpy Kid redoing of
Oh
it.
no.
That cracked me up for a week straight. But Elliot Rodgers does a very similar thing. Of course, his is completely sincere, and he did not Molotov people, but he just shot them instead, and then himself.
Hmm.
But like the idea was that it is this ranting and rambling of a very maladjusted loser. Of
Hmm.
course, Elliot Rodgers is stuck with a narcissistic personality disorder and a height deficiency. And instead, we have Mike Ma's character, which we'll call Mike Ma. I think Mike Ma's problem is instead, he's the very picture of that one meme. You know the one? I'm a Chad, but I have psychological problem, so I'm stuck on R9K. He is that guy.
Right.
Because he goes on quite a lot about like how cut he is and how nice his clothes are if you're really into a preppy look, or at least what you think a preppy look is. And he goes on a lot about that and his utter failure to connect with anyone in his social circle.
And
Yeah,
I mean,
it's R9K ranting.
and at the beginning of the book, he, in one of the very common instances of self-deprecation, he goes on a small rant about, oh, I would prefer to be home. I don't like going out with people. I don't really fit in with this scene. And then, like a sentence later, he's making fun of himself. It's not even a sentence; it's the same paragraph. He's making fun of that sentiment, and the defense, right? The defense mechanism of making fun of yourself when you're actually saying something serious is so severe that the paragraph making fun of the sentiment is longer than the actual sentiment.
Yeah, it loops back this idea of him being unwilling to make a point and let it stand. Because even
Hmm.
when you see the things like the New York passage, I think is one of the most striking in the book, because it's this long extended rant about how horrible and unpleasant a place New York City is.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I share a similar sentiment. And you know, this in New York City being a horrible place, I mean, it's a sentiment I fully sympathize with, being the daughter of a guy who actually did grow up upstate New York, where it was like apparently a paradise in the mid 80s. I mean, my reasonings are more it's a big city and it hasn't got, any hustle or vibe to it. There's no groove in New York City. He complains like about how they're really just, human rat people. It's the scum of the earth. Like, okay, man. And then he goes on and makes this point for 3 pages. And then what really the bathos of it, which really just undercuts the whole sentiment, is that the character is in New York City as he's writing this. It's not like, oh, I went there and I'll never come back. No, it's I'm here for business. It's being cucked
Right.
by the city.
And even that page, 3 pages or so of what seems like honest sentiment, it's not like he's not taking a meta approach to the guy that hates New York and making fun of that guy. He's saying something that he probably seriously believes. But like all the shit he's saying is like boomer stuff. This is why I don't want to give it credit of being like Poe rambles. He's talking about like iPads and like smoothie bars, like some
Yeah.
50-year-old who pined for the days of pornography theaters, and it's just it doesn't feel like it's earned its place as being this part of this new right alt schizo lit shit. It feels like a Marvel movie at some
Yeah.
point, at some times.
Yeah, it's got that same almost heroic idea of violence against the blatantly undeserving and the wicked. I mean, obviously, Marvel has a very different idea of who needs to be purged from the universe as Mike
Right.
Ma does.
The wrong idea.
But it's that same heroization of violence and this like quippy writing style. I mean, Mike Ma will go on a whole rant, and then the next quip that undercuts it is another rant, not Joss Whedon's back and forth. But
Right.
it's a very similar mindset of never really being fully sincere with the so-called acts of greatness you're hyping up in the story. Yeah, it is. I think, yeah, I'd say it is very boomerish. It does give the sentiment that he's really pining for like 1960. He's not pining for what the Bronze Age pervert is pining for.
Right. And also, he's not pining. He's not trying to build something, an idea, a sentiment, a new textbook or something for a new society is nostalgic about something that doesn't exist. Something he mentioned at the beginning of the book when he's talking about nostalgia from the 90s. But even his description of this nostalgic whitewashed 90s is like a description of the 60s, a time that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Yeah, it sort of shits on your own point when you're so obsessed with making a farce of it. It's like if Ted K, after releasing his manifesto and being perp walked, if he turns to the camera and says some quip about how silly everything he was doing was, it sort of just makes you can't take the person seriously.
Yeah, it's like if Ted Kaczynski, instead of, actually exploding people, just gave them glitter bombs. It's that kind of lameness, I feel. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the book for what it was. Like, I like the combination of novel and diatribe, which is Mike Mah's really quintessential style, having also read the sequel to this novel, which, contrary to popular belief, has no more plot than this one. And I mean, it's fun as a collection of R9K rants, and I'd say that really that's on the strength of the prose. Because, don't get me wrong, Mike Mah can actually write. It's like a lot of people on, lit or lit adjacent boards / mindsets think they can write, myself included. But no, like Mike Mah can actually put pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
At least on small scale. Like large scale plotting, pacing, structure, no, because the book just ends in a fucking deus ex machina. But like in terms of page to page, sentence to sentence prose, it's very good. It's sharp, it's clean, it gets the point across, regardless of whether the point immediately undercuts itself or not. And it's also, in my opinion, quotable. It gets a lot of Mike Mah's self-insert across. You can tell exactly the kind of guy he is after the first page. Whether you like him or not, well, I mean, that really depends on whether or not you grew up on R9K.
You say you liked the book for what it was. What was it? Like, what are you treating it as in terms of, like, is it a novel? Is it a manifesto? Is it philosophy?
Well, frankly, I'm reading it as I would unironically just read a thread on 4chan. That's what I'm reading it. It's like a really good thread. You know, the ones that get like screenshotted and then posted to Reddit or on iFunny and some wanker reads them out on YouTube. I'm reading it like that. It's like, here is the guy's opinions on the world. Post, thread, post, thread.
Okay.
There are even illustrations.
Right.
I mean, that's essentially what I'm reading it as. It's not, because of the weird way it's written, it's not really like fitting into any particular genre. I suppose you could call it like a philosophical novel, but you compare it to something like The Stranger or hell, even Siddhartha, it's not actually comparable. It's a very different beast. It's a product of online culture.
The comparison to American Psycho is pretty pervasive, but I don't know. So two things on American Psycho is that one, it had an obvious point, which was satire, lampooning of the mentality of a certain guy in a certain city at a certain time.
Yes.
I don't think Harassment Architecture has a similar focus. And also, the character in Harassment Architecture feels like American Psycho written by a guy that thought Bateman was just too cool to relate to.
Yeah, no, it's like I'd agree exactly. I'm a big fan of B, Bret Easton Ellis, and I'd say exactly it's that. It's Mike Mah tried to make Patrick Bateman relatable, but the thing is, you relate to Patrick Bateman by realizing, oh fuck, I'm in the same consumerist society he is. Mm-hmm. Not, oh fuck, I too violently, somewhat erotically fantasize of setting the local post office on fire.
Erotically. Yeah, no, I mean, some of the violent descriptions in this book are so weirdly erotic in Harassment Architecture. I don't know if you picked up on that.
No, I'd agree. And the scene where he shoots the policeman is very obvious here, because it's like, if normal people try that, they die. But this guy suavely comes in at the right angle, pops two of them, fights the last one, takes a bullet in the gut, which does absolutely nothing to hinder him. Despite the fact that he's not wearing the flak jacket he is textually stated to own earlier in the book. He managed to kill the last policeman and run off after, shooting the barista just to be sure. It's like this almost godlike idea of violence. Like, it's the fantasy of a kid who was really, just given a shit time at school and thinking, if I was, 2 feet taller and I weighed more than 90 pounds, I'd really give those guys a good talking to. It's that level of rebelling against the world. Whereas, in American Psycho, which I'd say it's probably the closest actual novel you can compare this to, the violence is not godlike. It's not heroic. It is erotic, yes, but it's not that kind of erotic thing that you can really get off to. People have, but it's not something I would recommend. No, it's gratuitous. It's to show this extreme decadence and heartlessness of consumerist American culture has completely pervaded everything, even crime. It's not in any way a part of Patrick Bateman's life that's distinct from any other. It's not something that's out of the norm for him, even if he is fantasizing about it, which is not really a conclusion in the book that I'd support either.
Okay. So you don't think American Psycho it's all Bateman hallucinating?
Not really. I mean, the issue with, I think, American Psycho that a lot of people forget is that it is canonically the part of the same universe as the rest of Bret Easton Ellis's writing. It's the same bibliography, it's the same canon. And the characters do overlap, events are referenced between them. And that just, if you read the rest of the books, with the exception of Lunar Park, which is in its own universe for very intentional reasons, fucked up shit like American Psycho happens. It's not, a hallucination or a dream. It's outright stated to be textual, that people are just like that. This is on the news. It's just, Patrick Bateman-esque things just happen in the world. So I think that's a far truer explanation, especially when in, I believe it is Glamorama. In Glamorama, you see Patrick Bateman actually appears for a scene wearing a bloodstained coat. And I'm thinking, well, this is from the perspective of another character, admittedly one with a fraying sanity, but a character who is insane in completely different ways to Patrick. So in that sense, I'd say no, it's the violence is textual.
Okay. The biggest departure between this and American Psycho to me is that this is frustrating because it comes dangerously close to being interesting. Like, if instead of using irony as a safety blanket, like so much media does, like not so much, everything must be soaked in like a couple layers of ironic detachment. But if this was a commentary on the using irony as a safety blanket in the same way that American Psycho was a commentary on infectious, insidious consumerism, in fact, invading every aspect of life, then it could be interesting. If the irony was explored in that fashion, instead of being drenched on everything that could be interpreted as serious, the book would be more interesting to me. But instead, it stays below that level of insight or thought, and to the point where it's just noise.
Yeah, I'd strongly agree there. I think there is a missed opportunity for Mike Mahoney to actually say something in this book, because he talks a lot, and I maintain this point. He doesn't say anything profound whatsoever. It's like read, it's just boomer noise. And it's like, if you want to actually get what a lot of people at like Goodreads think this book is, read American Psycho, read Bronze Age Mindset, and then have some really crazy dreams. That's the platonic ideal of harassment architecture as a serious text. But yeah, I mean, actually exploring irony as a safety blanket would be fucking fascinating. It's something I've never seen before.
Like, we agree that there's no story here, but I don't even think there's a point being made. It's just 170 pages of pure sentiment.
Yeah, it's sentiment with your fingers crossed behind your back.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point, not only because a lot of what Mike Mahoney is complaining about is his so-called idealized version of the 90s, with vague interpolations about, nature's really nice. And I feel like a real person when I'm outside, which is something personally I have never felt. It's not to say, I am the bug man of legend. No, I've been outside. I like hiking, but no, it's just stuff, man. It's just stuff. But like with this, because we're talking about his problems, not mine, there's no point, because the only conclusion Mike Mahoney reaches that's held semi-unironically is burn it down. Burn everything down. But there's nowhere to go from there. And even like in the conclusion, when he, encounters the tribe of people who are, in quote unquote, capital letters, exactly like him, and they rescue him from the one time sort of implied he actually went out and, committed violence. It's talked up to such a paradisiacal utopian extent that you can always return to this halcyon place once he's left. They'll always be there and keep him safe. And I suppose you could argue that it's like some self-awareness that really is just a deluded loser, and his idea of being safe is, pretending he's the macho warrior guy that would be Ted Kaczynski with an AK. But even then, that's such a sappy way to end the book. It was honestly my least favorite section is the conclusion. Likewise, with that, one thing I found, not so much with the violence, but as a lady who's very much into fashion, despite frequent complaints that I cannot dress like it, the way clothing is described in this book is just fucking weird. Because there's a lot of talking up, about this whole preppiness. Like chinos and Brooks Brothers shirt, close-cropped blonde hair, archetypal preppy stuff. And you have the whinging about, alternative lifestyles, people who like underground music, smoke weed, all of that stuff that's there to accompany it. But you then transpose this, with the guy, instead of, wearing loafers, he's wearing combat boots, or he's wearing a flak jacket under his shirt. Or he's just, open carrying and some firearm. He does this at various points. So he's got a grenade strapped to his belt, I think, in one scene. And you see these things, and it's like incongruous. But it's very clear that the weaponry is just accessories. At no point in a scene that's, really stated to literally be happening. It's not his fantasy or his hallucination. Are the weapons ever used or commented on?
Yeah, I feel the same way about his depiction of nature. It feels insincere, it feels ornamental. He describes nature, and he describes how much his character oddly loves nature. Yeah, but his depiction of nature is like, the trees are green, the flowers are white, it looks really good. There's no real beauty or romance in his depiction of nature. None of it feels like it has any depth or content.
I'd agree. I'd strongly agree with that. And one thing that, stuck out to me about the way Mike Mahoney describes nature, as opposed to somebody who's actually been in a natural situation and is at least somewhat educated on it, which you'd expect from Mike Mahoney, given how much of a boner he has for this, is nothing is specific. Nothing is unique. Nothing I read says, oh shit, he's talking about the American Southwest. Oh shit, he's talking about Oregon. None of that.
Right.
Frankly, I have never set foot in the American continents, for which I am deeply grateful, but can understand when they're being talked about. Like, even Bob Ross at least has a tangential knowledge of the subject matter. He's not just saying, oh, look at this tree, it's green. No, he understands what he's painting and how it fits together. And you don't see the literary equivalent in Mike Mahoney. There's no specifics. There's no intricate description of wildlife or plant life. It's just, oh, it's pretty. It's nothing you couldn't have gotten off Googling nature beautiful and writing scene descriptions of the first 4 pictures you see.
And the whole manifesto vibe of this book got me thinking, and the nature conversation definitely got me thinking. Have you read Industrial Society and Its Future by Ted Kaye, Uncle Ted?
I am ashamed to say that when I was a miserable and edgy teenage girl, that was one of the books that shaped me as a person. I spent like 2 years as a self-described Anprim, despite being on Tumblr.
And did you come out of that situation with like a desire to run to the woods, or?
Well, I came out of the situation realizing that that's kind of a gay sentiment to have, frankly. And, the lifestyles of real so-called primitive peoples don't live like that. They don't have this idealized situation that Ted Kaye describes, or I think is more accurately described by Daniel Quinn's Ishmael. There are people like the rest of us. In many ways, they're a lot better off than us. I concede that. But the problem is we are products of at least Western colonized society. We're not going to reintegrate into a wild we never had. It's like, I'm a suburban person, ultimately. It's whether or not I agree with Ted Kaye means nothing, because I'm never going to act on that, and I'm never going to live in the woods either. And I think ultimately you can see something similar with Mike Mahoney, and he admits it, but only ironically.
Only ironically. He admits that he pines for a time that, one, he says it doesn't exist. I sort of contend that you can't conceptualize it. A lot of people who lived through the prime of their lives before 9/11, they'll say to me, before 9/11, the world really was a significantly different place. And I've always thought it was overhyped, that it was kind of a sentiment that couldn't possibly be true. But the more I hear it and the more I compare how ridiculous things are now compared to like the headlines from 20, 30 years ago, I start to think that they're accurate. I start to think that there's some sort of incommensurability. And when comparing my experience as a person who's only experienced after 9/11, time post that nostalgic 90s period, and the experience of a person who existed before that break, I feel the same way with Prims, that they're pining and dreaming and fantasizing about a world that not only didn't exist, but that a world they literally are unable to visualize or to conceptualize. It's so far
Yes.
removed from anything you can imagine.
Yeah. And like, oh, yeah. Now, what I'd say with this is I strongly agree. And I think it really shows. And one of the things that pointed out to me, because, I have actually, talked to people who have done this lifestyle, some of whom were raised it, and some of whom decided that, they're really going to go native and like trek across the Sahara Desert for a couple months. And what surprises me is with a lot of these people, rant about this, how many of them do you see crack open the bones and suck the marrow out? How many of them, eat all the gristle off the meat? How many of them shit and then wipe their ass with their bare hand? None of them. They don't do the things that they could conceivably do to get close to this lifestyle.
Okay, is sucking out the marrow and eating the grizzle like some great primitive thing? Because you've forced me to have a different perspective about my mother. Because she is the only person I've ever known. Well, maybe everyone from her island. She is the only person I've seen in the States who will eat every single piece of the chicken. That's been so weird to me. Is that something is that a normal behavior for certain people?
Well, I mean, I'm drawing off a fairly limited frame of reference here, granted. And I mean, I've seen people here who've absolutely like skeletonized KFC. Like, I've seen people who start out with a Street Rise 3, and when it's gone, it's just bone shards. Like, some of them have been people who have experienced poverty and legitimately do value every single scrap of food. Others are just the weird kid at the lunch table. So I think for a lot of people, it's just a matter of personal preference or the culture you're raised in. But in reference to that, I'd say more if you look at people who live hunter-gatherer lifestyles, like the Kalahari-san or the Pirawa of Brazil, they will like skeletonize everything because meat is valuable. Meat tastes good. So like you crunch down the fat, the gristle, the cartilage because that's all you get. And
Okay.
it's like literally the best thing. It's like obviously you're gonna delete an entire filet mignon steak and then lick the plate if you're allowed to, because it's that good. And this
Right.
is their cultural equivalent of that.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
start sucking out the marrow to prove to all the homies that I'm a real Prim. I'm not a poser.
Yeah. And that's like one thing that I'd expect to see from Mike Ma, or at least like that level of detail, because he talks a lot adjacent to his, opinions on like the great outdoors about the value of eating nothing that's pasteurized, nothing that's been cooked for a long time. And I'm thinking, well, no, that's not archaeologically accurate. I mean, you can find ancient people and people of ancient cultures that like boil the shit out of everything because that's the only way it's done and it's edible. It's this surface level knowledge or this idealized idea of what he wants to be, not in any way a tangible reality that he's describing or he's pining for. And he notes this, but that doesn't take away from it, because him noting it for a lot of people is just going to be saying, oh yeah, I know, I'm in the big green outdoors. But like if you have the basic level of anthropology here, you see, okay, you're noting it, but that doesn't mean you're any less wrong, because I can tell you're wrong without you noting it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree that his depiction, well, his fetishism for nature is something that is done more sincerely and more skillfully by Bronze Age pervert, like in Bronze Age
Yes.
mindset, which that's one thing that he tries to do here that is done much better by his contemporaries. But there's also the sentiment, the pro-violence sentiment, which I don't know. Did you feel like that was as hollow as the naturism?
Ultimately, yes, but for different reasons. Now,
Okay.
I've been in a couple of fights, some of which have had lives on the line.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that's, really equivalent to the kind of fights that Mike Ma is describing, because there's a difference between pulling a knife on somebody outside a nightclub because they made a racist comment at one of your friends and, Molotoving the police station. Or the many, many accounts of doing ridiculous acts of violence.
Right.
But my main complaint is that it's gratuitous, not to the same like stomach churning, harrowing level as American Psycho, or like humoristic violence, which I suppose should probably something like Sard. Yeah, it's
Ooh,
not. Yeah, because Sard
okay.
at least can make violence either sexy or hilarious. But like Cormac McCarthy or Bret Easton Ellis, from very different angles, you can see like the depravity and just the destruction of human dignity. But with Mike
Hmm,
Ma, the violence doesn't actually have teeth. It's like he's evidently unfamiliar with a lot of the combat he's describing. And as you
I hate
know,
that.
an army brat, I can say that no, that's just not how violence worked. I've talked to enough people who've had a shell shocked look in their eyes, or are currently giving other people that look to say, no, dude, this is not 1,000 yard stare kind of violence. This is superheroes. And so I think it's hollow, not because Mike Ma doesn't believe it. I bet good money on Mike Ma genuinely believing that certain people in the world deserve getting their teeth kicked in. Hell, I believe that.
Oh,
Probably about
definitely.
different
Yeah.
people. But yeah. But no, it's like, yeah, Mike Ma might have tried once or twice, might have succeeded. But it's never this like John Woo level
Oh,
awesomely
dude.
competent stuff. It's just lack of experience with the subject matter and a lack of research.
Yeah, like listen, to me, if you're not going to have that crunchy, realistic violence that comes from experience in that particular field, right? It needs to be that Stephen Chow kung fu movie ridiculous violence, right? That American Psycho film, cartoonish, out of this world, nonsensical violence. So I'm not constantly squinting at your descriptions and like, this seems like somebody who does not go outside. It seems like it was written by like the violent fantasies of a pathetic person. But my real
Yes.
beef, my real beef with the violence is not its depiction so much as it exists in a work that is not a novel. I'm not reading this as a novel. As I said, I'm reading it as a manifesto. And as a manifesto, I must look at the roots of the violence, right? I must look at like why you're doing this violence, who this violence is against. And my beef with Mike Ma is that if you read his sentiment, he does not seem like he promotes, supports, or believes in radical individualism. But his violence is so individualistic. There's no higher cause, there's no higher goal, there's no overarching ethos, morality informing his violence. Like, I imagine Mike Ma and the necessity of violence. Everybody in this church of necessary violence probably thinks they agree with like the Italian fascists in that violence is not something to be cringed away from. It's something that is informs history and is necessary for the health and success of a nation. But the fascists justify this violent stance as being above human needs, as being above individualism. Individualism gets subsumed under the needs and the health of the state itself, and that's why we must sacrifice our young men to the machine, right? But Mike
Yes.
Moss, this
Yes.
is sort of grandstanding, moralist, justifiable violence that he purports is driven by like purely individualistic, hedonistic, and like rage, personal rage. It's not, if I'm reading it as a manifesto, I must say that his point is sort of, it doesn't feel legitimate.
Yeah, you can make philosophically defensible arguments to kick the shit out of people and set things afire.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think in certain moments of inebriation I've made them. But with this, there's none of that because the violence is really like I'm going to paraphrase here, but trust me, it's in the book. He basically says, "You know what's wrong with the world. Go out, burn things, fix it." And I'm just thinking, yeah, okay, either I know what's wrong with the world because I'm on 4chan, or I don't know what's wrong with the world, and that's why I'm reading the manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
In neither case is the exhortation by Mike Ma to set things on fire going to work.
Yeah, like that sentiment is literally kill shit, burn things, fuck school from like 2010 era Tyler the Creator, and it is similarly fucking empty. It's just rage. It's just teenage youthful rage. And if you're gonna do that, that's fucking cool. We can read a book about it. That's interesting. That has fueled so much
Yes.
interesting and entertaining art. But don't pretend to be a fucking intellectual. Don't pretend to like you're writing a fucking think piece, like you're writing something that's supposed to be thought provoking, that's supposed to have substance. Write your fucking youthful rebellion thing, but don't also have these little asides that ape philosophy poorly.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like either Mike Ma doesn't get this, which is a legit possibility, given that he is a grifter, or he isn't like putting in the effort to really back up the argument. So I think even then, if you want to like say, oh, you know, you should go out and set things on fire because you're a badass individual and the man's been keeping you down, like, okay, Stirner said this 100 years ago, much better. It's like,
Yeah.
why don't I just read that for like actual semi-coherent ranting philosophy that encourages me to set things on fire if I like.
Right. It has a call to action.
It's a call to action, and I think setting things on fire, granted, is not Stirner's main point. He's really more of an anarchist and a radical individualist at that. But you can read Stirner as an exhortation to do as you feel, like do as thou wilt from a secular philosophical perspective. And I mention Stirner particularly because that's one of the ones I find are the philosophers I've read to be so radically detached from humanity in the same way Mike Mahoney is, just completely incapable of really actually giving a shit about anything.
Yeah, Mike Ma is he's a grifter. He's definitely a grifter. And a lot of people levy these accusations towards any right wing adversary, any right wing writer, or more accurately, Twitter user. But Mike Ma, I mean, there are some of these type of guys that you like, that I like, that I like them because they seem to have an honest point. Like especially Bronze Age Pervert.
Yes.
Even Duer Vorkanen, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I hated his book, but I also saw honesty in his writing and sentiment. So I wouldn't levy him as an empty grifter like I would Mike Ma, even though that sounds a little harsh.
Yeah, that's the issue. It's very difficult to tell what is sincere because he's constantly hiding behind this level of irony. And I think that's one of the book's major faults is you can't ever really get behind anything because you don't know if even the author's voice supports it. Like, obviously, an author can write things he vehemently disagrees with. That's fine. But whether the narration itself supports it, or at least the book argues for it. But you don't have that here.
Right. You don't have argument. You almost have argument. But then then he pulls his shorts down.
Yeah, you have argumentation, but you don't have a central thesis.
Oh, definitely. Nothing resembling that. No.
And this really disappoints me because, again, as I've said, Mai is a good writer. And you can tell this in, for instance, the chapter titles, which is one of my favorite parts of the book, which, despite me ragging on it, I did actually quite enjoy. Just because, you know, if you want to read an R9K manifesto, that this is the book. And you've got these most absurd chapter titles. Like I'm just scrolling through the PDF here. And in order, these are Closer Look at Asians, Lean Into Until, Science Fiction Novel. And then you've got Spirit That Is Certain of Itself, Morality, point 36.4, Born into Fire, Daytime, Day, Sleep at a Stoplight, Awaken Only by Horn. It's like there's a level of talent that goes into consistently creating short, snappy bursts of prose like that, and then actually having that effectively summarize, at least most of the time, the content of the little rant, which is only at most like 5 pages long. And the occasional interpolations by Mike Ma's editor, quote unquote, that rant at him like, dude, this is inappropriate, or you can't say this. It's unfortunately somewhat underused, I'd say. Because if you turn this into like a Pale Fire-esque kind of thing, where you take this idea of, you know, actually commenting on irony as a safety blanket and have the editor directly call him out for that as a character, that could be interesting. I don't think I'd read it and enjoy it, but I'd read it and pretend to be very pseudo-intellectual about it.
Oh, dude, I'd read Pale Fire, except the guy is commentating on some autistic dude's manifesto. That sounds fucking amazing. I wish Mike Ma wrote that.
Yeah, I agree. It would be an interesting thing. It's like I'd be tempted to, you know, take a more obscure rant and like mystic it. Okay, that's really dating myself here, but you know, like actually going in through the lines, like commenting on it. But then again, I could just do that on 4chan boards and receive exactly the same amount of acclaim.
Yeah, for the Zoomers at home, Mystic is a show that was Red Letter Media before Red Letter Media. It's not as good.
It wasn't even good. Yeah. I mean, I think that about sums up Harassment Architecture. And like, I'd recommend read it, but like, don't go into it with expectations of it actually saying something. Like, take it exactly as seriously as, I don't know, you would an episode of The Modern Simpsons. And you're going to have a great time. It's a beer book. Granted, I did read most of it drunk, which may have significantly influenced my opinion. But it is a book you don't take seriously. And if possible, if you have friends, and if your friends can actually read, like, read it with them if, they're up for that kind of thing. It's kind of gay, I know, to read a book with another man and then talk about it afterwards. This is why I only read books with people of the opposite gender. But if you're, like, up for that, read it, talk about it. You have a blast with it. But, like, if you're reading it for anything like Bronze Age mindset, put it down and, I don't know, read Bronze Age mindset again.
Yeah, in terms of recommendations, I'd say if you're listening to this, if you even know what this book is, you should probably read it. You're probably into this genre. It's not a waste of time. And if it is a waste of time, it's 4 hours of time. So you're not losing that much. I'd recommend it. Mike Mahoney is a fine writer. The book needed an editor too, because there were some typos and shit, like, all over the place. Needed an editor too. And I'd say, if you're gonna write a thinly veiled manifesto, have something to say.
Yeah. If you're gonna just put yourself out there in general, I think is advice. Should you be prepared to take advice from extremely bored sorority student and a guy from the Caribbean? If you're gonna put yourself out there, like, just in general, if you're gonna put yourself out there, make sure you have a reason that isn't finances, because.
Yes.
I can tell you right now, no matter who you are, you can put yourself out in the street and you're probably going to make more money than self-publishing.
Oh, God, yeah. Literally. No matter how fucking ugly you are, fat you are, making OnlyFans, I guarantee you'll 100 times.
It's a great market for fat people.
OnlyFans, yeah. You'll make 100 times the money selling your ugly ass on OnlyFans than you will self-publishing books.
That is 100% true, and Nikocado Avocado is harrowing proof of this, I tell you.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's the fucking that's a fucking thesis.
That is anatomy, which I can only describe as eldritch. Just like the opposite of this book, which is completely mundane. Fun, yeah, but mundane. And so, as always, I've been LAbuschagne. You can find my stuff on Amazon by searching the keywords LAbuschagne. And I've been joined by Rhyme and a bottle of tangerine liqueur, which has definitely made this a lot more bearable.
Yeah, you can follow me at MancerRhyme, and I have a Substack. I have a lot of things that don't have anything on them, so I'm not going to plug them here. But yeah, I've been me.
Yeah, well, until next time, see ya. And I'd say, like, stay in school, drink your milk, and take your vitamins. But as we all know, according to Mike Mahoney, fuck school. Drink your milk unpasteurized. And we don't know who invented vitamins, but it's a toss between all the demographics we don't like and we know who they are. Until next time, this has been the Unreal Podcast.
See ya.
I may have gone too far in a few places.